Welcome to episode 24 of the Necronama.com. Following World War II, the United States military obtained formulas for 3 nerve agents developed by the Nazis: Tabun, Soman, and Sarin. At the U.S. Army Edgewood Chemical Biological Center, they used these gases to conduct secret experiments on human subjects as early as 1948. Initially, these studies focused only on the lethality of these gases and their treatment and prevention. But quickly, this turned to questions regarding the mental side effects and how to produce them without the lethal effects. By the early 1950s, the United States Army worked with Harvard anesthesiologist Henry Beecher as he conducted human experiments on the use of psychoactive compounds like mescaline and LSD. The experiments only grew from there. The Edgewood Arsenal human experiments occurred from 1948 to 1976. Around 7,000 U.S. military personnel and over 1,000 civilians became unwitting test subjects, being subjected to over 254 different chemicals, almost exclusively without the knowledge of the test subject. As most of the victims had no idea they'd been subjected to these tests, the follow-up care was lackluster at best. Many people lived with the side effects, including hallucinations and extreme pain for the rest of their life. Congressional hearings into these experiments in 1974 and 75 resulted in disclosure of the experiments, as well as notification to the subjects as to the nature of the chemical exposure, but ultimately compensation only went to a few families of subjects who had died during the experiments. Everyone else simply had to live with the consequences. Today, it's become something of an urban legend that the military conducted human experiments, but it was very, very real. And for many, it became a living hell that lasted the rest of their lives. I am James Sabata, horror author, screenwriter, co-host of the podcast you're listening to right now. And don't tell anybody, but there's a decent shot that I'm already dead.
And I am Donald Guillory, historian, educator, author, and I kind of question that myself sometimes, and I definitely question it after watching this film.
And today we're joined by Bradford Trojan. Bradford, would you like to tell us a bit about yourself?
I am from southern New Jersey, right outside of Philadelphia. Been out in Tucson here about 16 years. I started out in art school and photography, and then I moved into all the while playing music and being in rock bands, joining up with musical theater and avant-garde theater, writing a lot of different kind of music. I was in a national group called Dr. Dog in the early days, and then started a band in Tucson called Galactic Federation of Love back when, writing conspiracy theory songs, focusing on different topics. And
interesting.
And then starting to move back more into, in the more recent years, back into acting, and acted in national commercials, TV, film, indie film, webisodes, whatnot. And currently, we're filming a movie down in Tucson here. I met you at filming at some of the Comic-Con, the TusCon, and we filmed for 3 days straight, and then we're continuing shooting the rest of the feature in March. And so looking forward to that. And,
I'm super excited about my part in it. For anybody who doesn't know, I have this super important part where I'm looking at stuff in the background of one scene. I mean, I'm pretty excited. So
it's awesome. It's important. That's a crucial scene.
No, seriously though, like it was such a cool experience to watch you guys film during the convention, because that was my 13th convention of the year. And I hadn't seen anything like that at that point. Right. And I'm kind of to the point with cons where if something is new and interesting, it's rare, you know? Yeah. And so that was really cool. And I loved how you just incorporated everybody who was there. Like, if you want to be in this, come out, like, do this scene. Like, there's a part where you guys, like, came by my table, you know, like, when your character's rampaging down the aisles, and it was so much fun to watch, and I loved that I got to see something new and interesting. So yeah,
awesome. That's so cool.
Where'd you get the idea to film at Tucson? Like, how did that come about?
So I'll give this to the producers and director Cliff Campbell and Marty Catola, that they have been a part, and Eric Schumacher, one of the producers. They've been part of the con, especially for years now, and Jeffrey Knockin, who's a big part of it, who's all working on the movie, and they've really wanted to in this series. I joined in on the third movie of the series. This is the fourth movie, I think, and final. Yeah, but they all kind of are standalone. But you can watch them through if you want. But they basically really wanted to feature Tucson because it's been such a part of their life, and it's been a big part of the last movie, and just talking about it, and having the premiere there a year ago, and wanting to put it in as a featured character. So I was just like, I was really excited, of course, because I've been to the con now for a few years, and just thought it would be so cool to have this be such a a realistic part of what the story is in this film. And so I'm just going along with it, with the idea of what they wanted, but fully supported it and was really stoked.
Yeah, it was great. And the convention itself is just fantastic. This was my first year there. And going in, you hear it's a sci-fi horror convention, and everybody's like, they cap attendance at like 500 people. And I was like, what? That's the craziest thing I've ever heard. Why would they do that? But I'm also like, it was, I think, 46. It was their 46th year. And I was like, so clearly they know what they're doing. I'm not going to question it. I had the best time at this convention. I mean, the way that you can just kind of chill with everybody and really like get to know other people at the con, whether it's somebody like Jonathan Mayberry, who was the guest of honor, or if it's, somebody like me or whatever, it was just great how open everyone is, how everybody's just like, yeah, let's grab a beer. Let's do this, And I had so much fun. I literally begged them on Sunday to sign me for next year. So I'll be back in 2020. Anyways. Awesome.
Nice.
But yeah, Don didn't get to go. I've been telling him he missed out. So just rubbing it in at this point.
Look, I'll be back in
Don,
Arizona within a couple of years. Okay?
Sweet. But yeah.
I mean, on a more permanent basis.
Well, yeah, you better be here before that. Jeez. It's really going to affect my panels at Phoenix Fan Fusion if you're not. But so I don't know. We should probably jump into this instead of talking about everything else, I guess. So why did you choose the film Jacob's Ladder, since we always let the guest pick?
Yeah. Well, so it was interesting because I'll just say I started with one of my first ideas was The Fog, John Carpenter's The Fog, which I loved. And I was like, it felt pretty good. Like there's some cool stuff in there. But this really, when it popped for me, I was like, oh man, Jacob's Ladder. It's one of the top 3 scariest movies in my top 3 of all time. The other 2 being, the original It and In the Mouth of Madness. And so this one just, is like, wow, what a terrifying movie. And yet it's a gorgeous movie. When I decided, like, let me get into this and face my fears, my girlfriend who is also, it's one of her favorites. And she watched it with me as we were kind of doing some research for it. And, it just, it has such a strong message in these themes here that it kind of picking apart, which are in there of, trauma and death and dying. And so, I don't know, maybe it's also like winter time. It's kind of this time of going inward and exploring some of these more, inward ideas and topics. And, the nature, things die out this time of year. So I don't know. It just felt like a fitting place. And again, just kind of facing my fear of, let me go back into this movie and see what's there. And just so happy I did, because it's, like I said, it's just this gorgeous film, and the writing, the cinematography, and then the subject material. So much, it's so much there. There's so much there.
Awesome.
And it's Tim Robbins' best movie since Howard the Duck.
Oh man.
Here, I'm gonna say one more.
Make some Shawshank fans really angry.
One in particular just went silent, sitting here going, "Fuck you." No, I'm just kidding.
No, I'm totally joking. Shawshank's amazing. He's an amazing actor.
Shawshank's my favorite movie of all time. So
I'm
really protective.
Yeah, no, it is. It's that it probably is his his best role, Shawshank.
But I
totally agree.
I do have an issue. Like, somebody got paid to do his hair in this movie, and that really bothers me. But other than that,
yeah,
I'm kidding.
It looks like he constantly woke up from it every day on set. Here's another weird little thing, just to throw this out. I watched, which maybe we'll talk about, but I watched the kind of the bonus features online. You can just watch the deleted scenes, and there's a whole alternate ending which I was never aware of. And so the day I watched that and was kind of really getting into some of the research was on December 12th, 12/12. 2 days later, for somehow in like my news feed or whatever, I see, Danny Aiello died on 12/12.
Right.
Whoa.
Kind of strange. Yeah. So I watched this stuff. I really start my day of research and watching things on the day he died. So I don't know what that means, but
huh. Interesting.
Yeah, kind of a fun little synchronicity here.
So what about this movie scared you the most? Like, what is it that, like, when you say you had to go back to this movie, like, there's a lot of movies that have frightened me over the years, but there's only a couple that I have to think about going back to. So what did that for you?
Okay, so I guess it was filmed, it was 1990. I was 10 years old.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing I know I didn't see it in the theater, but I must have seen it on a home release. And, I don't know, 12, 13, like pretty young.
Yeah.
And seeing that, because I watched horror movies growing up all the time. My dad was really big into them. And so I'd just be like watching a lot of horror movies. And I think it's just, going back, watching it now, it's definitely the demons in the movie, the portrayal of these demonic forces are just so terrifying, and the way it feels so unsettling to see it, like the shaking, the movements that happen, the erratic movements, the distortions, feels like so wrong in your body as you watch it. And it's like you can't connect to it. You feel like something's off. And I think seeing it now, I'm realizing that's probably what was happening, and just having terrifying images. And then the subject material of like, this knowing, okay, this person's dying, and how scary that was to think about, it's still scary. There's a lot of fear there, but it's a little different now, I think, seeing it and having a different relationship with, what that could be or what that looks like. And as far as what could death be, and what does that mean?
Yeah, great. So one of the things that you mentioned that really hit me was you mentioned the word trauma.
Yeah.
And movies like this, when we open with this big war scene and all the craziness that happens there, movies like this usually build from that trauma. And the thing that really struck me with this movie was he was already totally fucked up before he went to war.
Yeah.
And the loss of a child is one of the biggest traumatic events ever, obviously. And I adored how they wrote that in, how all this terror that he's seeing and all the bullshit of war and the horrors of that may or may not even begin to compare to losing your child. And that was really powerful to me.
Yeah. I have a 2-year-old daughter now. She's almost 2. And I think that's another big part of seeing it now, is being able to actually feel what that's like. You have this little person outside that feels like, your heart is now on the outside of your body, and it's just so raw and vulnerable. So to really to see that now has such a different meaning, even though back then I knew what that was like. Like I could sense like, oh, this is just so terrible. I can't even imagine. But now imagining it, it's like, wow, this is really the worst possible thing that I can see happening. And especially if it's Macaulay Culkin.
Right? He's so cute. I was like, oh, Macaulay used to be so cute.
He was really adorable. But
I was just like, how messed up is this kid? Like, he dies in this. We have My Girl. Like, you know, everything he did in Home Alone. Or the Good Son. Yeah, exactly. Like,
wow.
We should just do Macaulay Culkin month. Yeah. Anyway,
he got hit hard. I never thought about that.
I mean, I love the guy, and I love his bunny ears thing he has going on. But yeah.
The other interesting thing is that my other life, as far as, you know, like what day job is, I have a private practice doing trauma work with people, and it's called somatic experiencing. It's like a body-based trauma therapy. So I've worked in treatment centers for years, and I have a private practice now in Tucson. So it's really interesting, you know, just to going in here, watching this and seeing what trauma can actually do, seeing it firsthand now with people, and just what their experience is, you know, the kind of hellish reality that is created from trauma. Because I've worked with, you know, I've worked with people who are vets. I've worked with people who have lost their children in very traumatic ways, and so it's just really interesting. I'm going to
turn this over to Don in a second because I don't mean to keep cutting him off. No. My day job... No, be quiet. I'm talking now. No. Anyway. But my day job, I'm a grant writer at a nonprofit that helps kids who have been like sexually abused or domestic violence victims or human trafficking victims
Thank you for doing that.
So many parts of horror hit me that way as well. Like exactly what you're saying, where I have had a couple movies where I'm like, wow, the thing that somebody told me in real life was worse than that, you know, like it's crazy. But anyway, Don, what do you want to say about trauma in this movie? Because I know you're like, shut up, James. I'm going to post a picture of you as Picard and me as Wesley.
Shut up, James. No, like even watching this film, you know, when Brent's talking about the idea of how scary this film was, and you and I have discussed this on previous shows, and even at panels, the stuff that's scary to me is the stuff that's possible. It's not, you know, like I love it, even the new version. The idea of the clown, you know, chasing you around, and you know this supernatural being chasing you, that stuff doesn't scare me. It doesn't, you know, it's not one of those things where I'm kind of like, you know, waiting for zombies or the dead to rise from their graves and start chasing you down the street or anything like that. It's the real shit. Like, okay, I'm doing everything right, hell, let me just go for it. The simple thing of sending my child to school has become one of those concerns, those worries for me, of what could possibly happen to my child that I cannot prevent, or even worse, how can something that I could prevent, how could I allow that to end up hurting her? You know, as far as, you know, second guessing and say I should have been there, I should have done this, I should have paid attention to all the signs. And it gets written into a lot of films where, you know, the dad is driving, doesn't pay attention, or the mom looks away for 2 seconds and the kid drowns in the pool, you know, those types of things. But for me, you know, it's very fearful. I joke with family members and my in-laws all the time. And I tell them, like, look, this is my only kid. Anything happens to my kid, I'm burning down the entire town. And they just kind of look and laugh and say, no, you don't understand. This is the one thing in my life that is an extension of me, and it is my job as a father to look out for her, protect her, and make sure. I told James, like, last week, I had this weird dream that my dog died, and for the remaining like 5-6 days, all I did was spoil the shit out of him. And the same thing with my dog. Like, something, if I even think something bad is going to happen, or I'm concerned about something possibly happening to her, like I'm on guard about it. And if I do happen to have a dream where something happens to her, like she gets away with murder for the next 2 days. And it's just one of those things of, Dad must have had a nightmare. I'm like, yeah. It was pretty bad. Like, yeah.
I've heard potassium can influence nightmares, apparently. So if your daughter starts bringing you large amounts of bananas, watch out for that.
Yeah, that's funny you said that, because I remember when I was in like high school, we didn't know it was potassium, but it was just like, don't eat bananas before bedtime. And I remember I ate a banana like pretty late. We were like playing music or something, and the dream I had was this terrifying like skeletons in this coffin car just like tearing around trying to like rip me apart. And I woke up and I was like, I'm never eating a banana before bed again.
Yeah, I don't know if it's true, but I literally, when I heard that when I was in college, I went out and I got bananas because I was trying to induce nightmares to help me write better. And I have a shit ton of nightmares anyway, so I can't even tell you if it worked. Like, that's just my normal life. So anyway, so back to this film, since I've derailed us again.
It's gonna happen, man.
But no, I really enjoy how layered the trauma is in this film. A lot of films pick a trauma and roll with it, so to speak. And this one really layers it, and it's so multidimensional and in more ways than one. And it's really a masterclass in how trauma can work as a character, and I love that.
Yeah.
Well, what's weird about the way they deal with trauma? You have that moment where there are people that are supportive of what he's going through, as far as understanding, hey, you went to the war, you lost a kid, what can I do to help? And then there are others, at least when he starts, at least all these worlds that he's living with start switching. There's this idea of like, what are you complaining about? You're fine. You're just imagining this stuff. It's not real. And what I've seen from a good amount of people who deal with things like PTSD or just any traumatic experience and trying to have some sense of, sense of calm. I don't want to say sense of normalcy, but the sense of calm in their lives. You have a good number of people don't understand what they've gone through, and they kind of belittle their experience. Like even most recently, Representative Ilhan Omar, who lived through a civil war as a kid, talked about all this talk about going to war with Iran is like triggering her PTSD, and of course, social media being the way social media is, there were some people who were supportive and saying like, yeah, we can understand. You're the only elected official at the national level who's seen this stuff personally from the side of a child. But on the flip side, you had a good number of people who were, oh, what the hell do you know about PTSD? You've never been to war, and just all these different things, and you started having people at least rally on social media to explain PTSD doesn't come just from fighting in a war. It comes from living through a traumatic experience. I mean, that's what the T is in PTSD.
Yeah.
It could be physical violence, sexual violence, psychological violence. There's so many things that could cause someone to reach that psychological state.
Yeah, that's totally true. There's so much that can influence them. Just even secondary traumas, hearing about it. Mm-hmm. We're kind of just living in a very traumatic world, and there's a definition of trauma we like in the work I do. We use is just anything. And then you really see it's anything that takes us out of the present moment awareness. So, in a very general sense, that's a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Like in very just kind of like dysregulated kind of states in our nervous system that we're just bombarded with. Yeah, but I mean, just anything that's people have lived through, and there's obviously grander scale of what that is. But I think it's just it's becoming more of kind of the thing. I think it's kind of good. Like most in mainstream, there is more of like trauma awareness and focus, and that people are getting. Oh, hey, right. There's like these things are really traumatizing, like you said, like the psychological, like. If you're like have a not a great attachment with your parents growing up, or there has been like a lot of misattunements, like that's just traumatic, and that builds up in our nervous systems, and it just stays with us. It doesn't just go away until we're able to to kind of let it kind of move out through our bodies, through more of those like primal brain structures, like the brain stem and things like that. So it's really interesting, like in seeing, I guess in the movie, even just bring it to that, like I said, these people that are so like, these shaking that happens and this trembling, and it's such a hallmark of this kind of release and discharge of these survival energies in people's bodies, is when they start to shake, tremble, and have involuntary movements. And it's cool because we see that a lot in the movie, and even just in him, his body, like all the trouble with his spine and going to the chiropractor and trying to get fixed and adjusted. So,
I love that scene. The
with Danny Aiello.
Yeah, when he looks up and he's like, "Anyone ever tell you look like an angel?" That's such a nice little like toss towards the end of the film, but like this great little banter, and then just the response of you every time that you come in here. I love that.
So beautiful.
Well, I think a really good thing, before we get, I guess, discuss the demonic stuff and everything else that's going on. I think what's really good about this film is, even though it's made in 1990, it's following in the footsteps of Born on the 4th of July, Full Metal Jacket, like we talked about in an earlier episode, and even Platoon, where they have this discussion without really discussing it, about the trauma of warfare and what these young men, primarily these young men, were experiencing, and kind of the dismissiveness that they would get for years on about what their injuries were or what they were going through. Because in this film, not as much as what you would see at Born on the 4th of July, but there is kind of that, oh gosh, I forgot the one. There's a movie where they kind of make fun of the VA the entire time. But how you see these men coming back from war and how they are denied medical services or even psychological services and therapy to deal with not just the physical trauma, but the psychological trauma as well. Because, from his character, he's suffering from both. With at least the way it's represented, you see how he's dealing with the emotional disconnection or the emotional trauma, but then also having to deal with his spinal issues, which again, when you get to the end of the film, it's kind of like, that's what they were doing. That's why there was so much concentration on this and that. But it really, for anybody who's been in the military, whether you've deployed or not, like there's so much stuff that comes up in this film where you look at it and you're like, son of a bitch. That's why, it's like, I definitely feel what, I almost called him Eddie Dufresne. I definitely feel what's going on with him, where it's kind of like, I'm complaining about this pain and nobody's listening to me. I'm complaining about, something's not right. Or even just the idea of trying to pretend like everything's okay. And even at the end of the film, there's still kind of this idea of he's trying to convince himself that everything's okay, despite everything that's going on around him. And that's also having to deal with acceptance of what's taking place, but then also denying, what has happened to him.
What do you have on your notes, Bradford? Since you said that you have extensive notes, we'll let you lead the discussion.
Well, so I think that the crux of all this, honestly, in the movie is it is a movie of death and dying. Mm-hmm. I was fascinated that the writer, Bruce Joel Rubin, who wrote Ghost, which I didn't know, and I think the director did Fatal Attraction. And okay, but the writer, he's also a meditation teacher, so he still teaches meditation. He's a screenwriter, but he has a big meditation practice. And in some of the, I don't know what it was, bonus features I found online of just listening, he's talking a lot about his meditation practice and what this movie has meant to him, and in Buddhism, talking about the Bardo states. And So this is the idea of, I don't know if you're familiar, heard of the Tibetan Book of the Dead.
Yes.
It's popularized, right, by Timothy Leary. And so, in these states, they talk about as you're dying, when you die, you're still, your soul, the essence of you is still trying to figure out what's going on. And it goes through these states called the Bardo that last for, I think, 7 weeks. And through that, you're experiencing a lot of different things, whether it's kind of like images, events, lights, just all kinds of sounds, smells, all kinds of things that you're still going through and feeling. And so this kind of is similar to, in Christianity, the purgatory. You're going through this intermediary state towards whatever the next thing is, and obviously in Christianity it would be ascending to heaven. In Buddhism it would be reincarnation. You're taking another life if you haven't completed what you need to complete here in this life. And so I think it's just fascinating, right? So this writer is really just injecting this whole story of, he's at war. He has this traumatic event. He's killed. But during this state of being killed from the bayonet going into him is this entire life that he lives and goes through for the rest of the movie, up until he finally accepts what's happening and realizes, this is what I need to do. I need to let go. So death, dying, letting go, just letting go of you're holding, you're grasping onto what we hold so dear, our memories, our sense of self, who we are. My partner also, she pointed out, which was kind of cool, I never thought of, is that he's working as a mailman, right? And so mailmen,
right.
they're sorting things out. They're trying to figure out where things go. I was like, that's awesome, cool. That's so cool. I would never have seen that. And and then we even get into one of the Louis. So Danny Aiello's character, this is kind of great quote, which I love so much. If you're frightened of dying and holding on, you'll see devils tearing you apart. But if you've made peace, then the devils are really angels freeing you from the earth. Love it. Gosh, it sends chills up my spine thinking about how much how much I hold on, how much I just don't let go of things. And, and then it just, in smaller ways, how it just it cycles back, it comes back up. It's a mental state of aggravation. I get pissy with my family, and then it's just like, man, darn, can't I just let go of that? It's gonna just keep coming back, it's looping. And whether that's called karma or just the law of cause and effect, right? I keep doing this thing. It keeps coming back around. I got to let go. And so seeing Jacob Singer's character, just he can't let go. He keeps getting trapped in these kind of demonic states, these, in Buddhism, they're called hell realms. They're just these but they're not ultimately real. They're just still projections of his mind. But they keep haunting him. They keep pushing him, and then Jezebel, right? So then we have these Bible references, Jacob's ladder, which I looked into that, and I don't see anything too exciting about the story, other than I just love this image of this person Jacob who was sat back. He's kind of in the forest. He sits back. He has this vision of these angels descending and ascending up this ladder to heaven, up this staircase. And just how beautiful that is, and then you have Jezebel, his girlfriend, in the post kind of in the death state, intermediary state, who's in the Bible is known as this terrible seductress and evil demonic woman, which is probably also from the Crusades and demonizing women and killing the goddess, which sucks in its own, but here she is, as a seductress, just holding him into this existence. He won't let go. And she's, the pleasures of the flesh, kind of like desire is what's holding him back. And all the women actually kind of recognizing that all the women in the film are just holding him, or trying to keep him. They're flirting with him. Like everybody's flirting with him. There's a scene where these women are singing "Please, Mr. Postman," and just like, "Come on, baby, come on back." And then the palm reader who, is doing this cool scene where she's like, you don't even have a lifeline. It says you're already dead.
Right.
You're out of here, baby. But she's flirting with him, and and he's in that.
Well,
scene
and Jezebel even calls that out. She's like, "Are you two flirting?"
Yeah. She's like, and it's just. There's actually another scene that I never noticed before, but Jezebel, he's trying to get up and like move towards something. I forget what it was, but she goes behind him in bed and touches his spine. And it's just like one image of her just caressing his spine. And then he kind of comes back, he comes back from where he was trying to go, I just got seeing these things of like this letting go, and he just couldn't, she just is holding him there. She's this, this demon that's kind of.
Well, and even like when she torches or gets rid of his photos from the past of his kid and his past life, and she's trying to help him let go, but she's not. Like, in doing that, you're strengthening that resolve to not let go.
And do people still have incinerators in the apartment? It's like, what the heck? Wow.
Man,
kind of cool, but yeah. So this it's just really interesting, like the way that that desire, that how hard it is to let go, and you just see this, like, the torment that he has, where he just keeps fighting, and I can't even imagine. I mean, it's like, wow, is that what happens? Is that what happens when we're dying? Is it that we're just having this really intense, we can't let go of things. We can't just be free, but we have to.
Basically, yeah. Don, you got anything to add to any of that?
I was just thinking about a few stories. I mean, more anecdotal than anything else, where people talked about how they weren't going to die until they settled something with someone. They might have been on deathbed, stage 4 cancer, any number of things. And there were always these stories of, this person had to finish, they had to see their grandchild graduate. I remember there was this, even when the Boston Red Sox, they broke that long curse, and even Chicago a few years ago, that long strand of, or streak of not winning a World Series, where there were doctors and nurses in places like retirement homes or nursing homes that were stating, like, old Mr. Williamson, he finally, got to see the Cubs win, so he could let go and finally die. It was a lot of stories like that. It's connected to the sports, or even the stories like, I need to apologize to my brother, my father, mother, cousin, whoever it was, from who I offended so long ago, because I'm not ready to go with whatever secret it is I'm carrying for the rest of my, that I've been carrying for the entirety of my life. But yeah, even with this, I think about what is it that I wouldn't be willing to let go of, or at least what would kind of keep me enticed to stay there. Because I was watching the film Incarnate last night, and this one character goes and saves people from demons, kind of like what Jacob is experiencing. He's going to save them from the succubuses that are attaching themselves to people. But the way the demon convinces them that nothing's wrong is it gives them what they want, or something that they're missing in their life. Like there's this guy who I guess is somewhat successful, but he's not good with women. So he's in a nightclub, and he's surrounded by all these beautiful women who are attracted to him. So the guy walks in, he's like, none of this is real. It's like, what are you talking about? I'm at the club, I'm having fun. And all the women are like clawing at him and trying to talk to him and all these things. And so basically the demon is trying to wear him down to when he's weak enough that she can, it can kill him. And what the guy's explaining the entire time is, if you don't, the people aren't willing to let go of these things, these ways that they see themselves, or the way they want things to be, and that makes the hold that whatever this demon is a lot stronger on them. And that's what reflecting on this film, that's what I kind of see here is Jacob doesn't want to let go, as you stated, doesn't want to let go because there are all these things that make him comfortable, make him feel safe. And the idea of him leaving or letting go means that he's going to be leaving all that stuff behind, or at least not being attached to it anymore. Things like his son. If I have to, get rid of these pictures and things, I'm going to long for him even more because I miss this son. He died in a very traumatic way, or died, and I've suffered from the trauma of that loss. And now I'm losing the pictures of him, and now it's going to make me feel more compelled to not let go.
Yeah, it's just, I think after the feeling I got watching it again, was also one of, I wasn't as scared, of course, this time, but it was more of a relief, and just thinking, it gave me like a stock, and maybe it's, close to like watching it in the new year, but giving me kind of a reflection of, hey, where am I? Where is it that I'm holding on in life? Where is it that I haven't made amends, or what are the things that are like holding me back that I've created upon myself, and I mean, I guess just in the bigger picture, how much everybody does that, so
oh yeah,
as far as socially, like here it is, like we do that so much, and I just think, wow, what an amazing story to like help people to maybe see that's what we do.
I have a tattoo on my back, and it's a symbol that literally means let go. I got it like let go of anger, let go of depression, let go of things that hold you down. And it's on my back, and I never see it, so I don't think it's worked. But no, but my point is I agree. I think everybody does it, and I mean, the things I've been able to let go of in my life have helped me so much, and I wish that I could find the willpower to work on the rest a little more. But man, like, it's amazing to me how even like the people that I think have things the most together, maybe even sometimes especially them, like when you really get to know somebody and you start hearing like the things they haven't let go of or the things that they can't let go of. And it really like humanizes everybody and makes me realize, hey, we're all doing this. Like the most we can really do is help each other with it and, hopefully get somewhere with that. So, but yeah. The thing I like about this movie is nothing is like the things he won't let go of are completely rational things to not let go of.
Right.
It's not some anger over some stupid thing that happened. Like it could go so deep as I gave him the bike. If I wouldn't have given him the bike, he wouldn't have been on it when he got hit,
yeah.
It's these very real things. And I love it so much because of those things like war, the child death, even like that scene where he's laying in bed with his wife and he starts talking about the dream he had about the other lady, like I've had conversations like that with my wife, like,
oh yeah, me too.
So yeah, I mean, it's crazy. So I like how grounded it is instead of he won't let go of some crazy shit that doesn't matter. So
yeah. It's the big stuff.
Yeah, you were talking about. I'm gonna kind of jump towards the end here really fast, just because I don't want to forget to mention this. But you're talking about doing a lot of research and different things you watched, and I really only read one thing, and and that thing actually gave me a really cool insight that I wouldn't have had otherwise. At the end with the staircase, and we'll get to the staircase, but I don't want to forget to say this. Basically, the original screenplay had like this very ornate staircase made of marble and like giant columns and all this other stuff.
Oh.
And I don't remember if it was the director or who it was, but somebody was like, no, the point is where we're the happiest. And that's when they kept it at the house instead, because he would have been the happiest with his son in his own house, going up the stairs to his bedroom or whatever's up there, you know? And I think that ties in so much with what we're saying about not letting go. And that's why I'm jumping ahead and talking about it, because as much as we hold on to these sad moments, these depressing moments, the guilt, anything else, we hang on to the happiest thing as well. And I think it gets overlooked a lot. Like, my father died 19 years ago, and I mean, I've been a fucking mess over it most of my life, right? Yeah. And I concentrate on the cancer or the last conversation we had or whatever else. And man, it's those happy moments too. Those are also the things I can't let go of. So my point in bringing all this up and with the staircase and everything is, I think that part of not being able to let go of things is that we fear losing that happy part as well if we let go of any of it. Or like, if I stop hurting over my dad being dead, am I forgetting who he was? You know, that kind of thing. So I think that it's so multi-layered in the not letting go that it honestly makes it even crazier to think about. Like, the more you think about it, the more fucked up it gets. But just, I wonder how much that fear of losing the happy moments is why we can't let go of the bullshit moments too.
I think you're totally right. Yeah, I think that can also really hold us back. I mean, it's both. I mean, we need that to balance out
of course,
the trauma, and then, but it's still like, how much do we get stuck in not being able to let go of the happy stuff, the good stuff, you know? Because I mean, that also feels like a trap at times, where it's just, oh, I just had this amazing thing happen. I just did this great, this great feat, and now I can't like get back to it. It's gone, and I want it back. I want to keep like doing it.
Yeah,
it's had like a runner's high from something, and now it's like, why can't I do that again? So, yeah, I think that can also really just keep us locked. And it's hard to imagine what happens if I let go of that too. Mm-hmm. Can that actually be freeing? And then can that actually produce, can that still produce joy and, and contentment?
And that's why we're all a mess, everybody. So what about you, Don? Are you a mess? Oh
my goodness. Again, I'm sitting here thinking, that is the upside and the downside of it is, if you have those things that you need to get rid of or let go of, there may be positive attachments to it as well, because we often have these moments where we think like, oh, if I hadn't done X, things would be better. But then you have to realize that going, in direction one way, or making that left turn instead of that right turn, still led you possibly to something good that happened to you. So you can't undo these. And we see this all the time with all these, ridiculous ways that people incorporate time travel. And they say, oh, well, if I only went back and I, instead of striking out in Little League, I hit that home run, so many things would be different. And then you realize that you've just erased your kids because you happen to hit that ball and become, a famous baseball player, or you become, you take some other path or get accepted to a different college. You never run into people, all these different things that take place. I think Butterfly Effect actually did a good job by talking about, these little things that you happen to do can change the entire course of your life. But yeah, I mean, you end up, or at least to make a reference to that film, he even sees like, oh, well, I got rid of this one bad thing that happened. And then it leads to, what he thinks is a good life. And you see that other bad stuff is happening, and you've lost the good stuff that you had experienced with this other person, or you don't know them at all. And so I think with the case of this film with Jacob, that is going to be a heavy thing to deal with of, if I let go of the disappointment I had about, or the sadness I had about my son's death, does that mean that I'm going to forget my son? Do I have to let go of my son completely? Because I can't forget about that incident, or at least I can't forget about my son without forgetting about that incident, and vice versa.
So let's get back to the demons for a minute. I have an actual point, I think. But I like how he's literally battling his demons, right? But I like how it's always, I don't want to say subtle, that's not the right word, but we don't get like the big full-on demon standing there. You know, we get like the tail shooting through stuff, or we get
the shaking guy.
Or
the shaking guy.
And like when her face morphs, when she's like Jezebel's right in front of him, and like her face just, it's not even a huge morph. That's what I like about it. It's just this creepy ass thing that quickly happens. And I mean, I love their portrayal of demons in this, whether they're demons or angels, as Danny Aiello tells us. But like, I love how, again, subtle's not the right word, but you know, like the scene where Jezebel's dancing and the fucking tail like shoots through her body, you know, or things like that. I love their portrayal of the demons, and I just really like the literal battling your demons, because he doesn't battle them. Like, they're there, but he's not going to war with the demons, you know, like, but they're clearly haunting him. So I guess haunted by your demons is a better term.
Yeah, I love that. I love that it's not like, battle worthy. It even has a little like kind of devil's advocate, that feeling, just this little morph, like it's off. Something's off, and it's terrifying. And you know, the scene in the hospital when they're going through it, that's just like probably one of the most like overt moments in the film, where you just see like such horror. But it's like all the things that are not, it's not physical battle. It's all like mental, emotional, kind of like the war, I guess the warfare, warfare that it's going on in this kind of dark night of the soul that he's having.
The hospital scenes are just fantastic.
God.
And I didn't know that they had inspired Silent Hill. And that made me love them even more, because Silent Hill is one of my favorite franchises of all time. And so I thought that was really cool. Like, once I heard that and started making the connections, it was very clear. Like, Silent Hill kind of in parts of the game looks like it ripped off direct scenes from this. But
wow.
Yeah, I thought that was so cool. And Silent Hill I loved because it would legitimately creep me out, you know? So I think I actually am less scared of this movie because I used to be scared of Silent Hill. So I'm like, I've made it through worse than this, buddy, you know? But no, but those hospital scenes, and I mean, if you talk to people who haven't seen the film, and I'll tell you straight up, I hadn't seen the film I don't think I'd ever seen the full film before until this week. And
full disclosure.
Yeah, but I've seen those scenes my whole life, you know, like those have always been the pieces that stick out to me. Like, we've talked about those scenes in panels, you know, so those scenes are iconic and they're so well done. And I thought they really stood up today still. You know, it's a 1990 film and it still looks fantastic in those parts.
I think the effects are amazing. Yeah, and there's like, I mean, I don't think there's any CGI or whatever they were doing, but incredible effects. Now, here's another part here that kind of jumping into is the conspiracy part of the movie. Yeah. So, I mean, it's kind of the thread through, and even at the end, he has the director did the little on-screen information about the government testing BZ on the soldiers. Okay. So that's really that's some wild stuff. You know, there is a lot of information now. This is the kind of thing where, you know, being and I say like a maybe I'll call myself a recovering conspiracy theorist. But you know, I had it in I put it into really good use in my time. Like I said, writing songs about it. I did a lot of conspiracy theory, music, and so that it was fueled a lot in my life, creative endeavors. But this is interesting because it's the kind of thing that they had that in 1990. Over the years, I've been very aware of the government's MK Ultra project, and it was kind of the thing where maybe even just 10 years ago, like, oh, that's just conspiracy theory. And now it's totally true. It's out on mainstream news. They went, whenever I see something get popped on NPR, I'm like, okay, now we're just like catching up to some of these things that have been, on the fringes or, quote, conspiracy theory. And not to say that every conspiracy theory is going to turn true, but with this, it's just interesting that, the MK Ultra project, so much of this really bad stuff, drug testing on soldiers. I think one of the bad guys was Sidney Gottlieb, who was an experimenter. They did a lot in the States. I forget what area, but they just did terrible things to vets, to soldiers, hallucinatory drugs, I think LSD, ketamine, all kinds of stuff. And so this drug that I think that's modeled off, that's called BZ, I forget what it stands for, that would make soldiers very hallucinate, violent. And what the extent of the drug testing is, I'm not so sure. I couldn't find a lot. I did stumble upon one website that went way deep into like uber conspiracy theory in the movie, like symbols in the movie, stuff that was going on in the movie that I was like, I never even would have noticed, as far as, like connections to 9/11 and like predicting, certain things that I was like, this is pretty fascinating, as far as what they're pulling out and what they connected here. But needless to say, I'm not like going along with it, but there was just a lot. And then some parts of the movie, they're pointing out, okay, the dates that were happening, this is where there were certain offensives happening. This is where, the drug testing was actually going on. So how true to life the movie is, as far as, the shadow side of what the government's been doing to soldiers, and who knows what they continue to do. I did see that in 2009 there was a lawsuit by vets against the military for this, specifically, I think, the drug testing that they were doing on them. So, it's like that was 17 years later. I bet the movie probably helped propagate a lot of stuff for the vets to help mobilize certain things, to take out lawsuits, to kind of, take on the U.S. government for some of the atrocities that they've done. I mean, my dad was a veteran of the Vietnam, and, the stuff that they did to them, they spraying Agent Orange, just even bad stuff like that. Yeah, it's just kind of crazy stuff, it's like, ugh, like, wow, what a yucky side of of these men that have already been so traumatized to do this other kind of horrendous stuff to the soldiers.
I was actually reading about some of the court cases, and the thing that really struck me was it was basically a big slap on the wrist. It was, hey, you need to tell soldiers before you test on them. And hey, you should have done that better. And some people got to pay out, like if somebody died, but it wasn't billions,
Yeah.
But for the most part, like it was just like, sorry, we shouldn't have done that. And yeah, it's
terrible,
so disheartening. So yeah, it's
the big green weenie basically saying, "Oh shit, you caught me."
Yeah. Here's a couple dollars, go away.
Yeah.
I love that scene where he like gets together with his old friends after his friend's funeral, and he's talking about, oh yeah, he was seeing stuff and it was too much for him, and you know, you have the one guy who's nervous and like drops the beer, and other people who are like, yeah, I've been experiencing the same sort of thing. And I really like how each person was experiencing trauma differently. If we assume that they're all experiencing the same thing, which, you know, I mean, you know, the odds of that, but like, let's say they are. I like how they were each written in a way that they're expressing it differently. That's always a big thing that I look at in movies is, do you make different people react differently to the same stimulus? Because humans don't react the same way. And I thought that is a really powerful scene. And I also liked how it's not followed up on as much as it could be. Because I think in the context of this movie, it works so much better not following this than it does to really travel down that rabbit hole. I think that it adds more horror to it.
Yeah. Yet actually it terrifies me when they go and they get with Jason Alexander's character as the lawyer and he just shuts the case down. And I'm like, this is so terrifying just because no one is believing them. And then it's like they're just trapped, you know, just traps everybody in their own private hell.
Well, and it also works for me in the, if this is all in his head, then it makes total sense that he's the only one that shows up, you know? Like, yeah. So I really like all the different facets to that little story arc. And, yeah, just how quickly it writes it off while also just going, am I fucking crazy? Like, it's really powerful. I like it a lot.
There's a scene where it's the one guy who dies where before the funeral scene, and who comes and tells Jacob what's been happening, and then his car blows up.
Right.
And there's that part right there. He says, "Oh, must be my lucky day." Sees the quarter. He goes down, and the quarter pulls away from him. What's going on with that?
His luck ran away.
Is that it? His luck ran out, ran away. Yeah.
No, but I do think it's interesting. Like,
if it's a hallucination and he's dying through all this, then is it just okay? His luck that's it. It's like that's the moment, one of the moments.
I mean, it's also kind of that dangling carrot, right?
Yeah. There's still something good can happen.
Yeah, except it was the 90s, so it was a quarter, whereas now it's $1 on a fisherman's fishbowl. Gotta be quicker if you want that quarter, you know? Oh, inflation. Anyways. But yeah, no, I like that whole part from the time that his friend shows up all the way through that court scene. I think it's fantastic that while it's like a self-contained little story, we just don't really, it doesn't play a major role in the rest, you know? It doesn't, there's no follow-up later. And I think that just makes it last so much longer in my head because there's no resolution.
Even adding more to his kind of like purgatory.
Even prior, I was thinking about, you know, at least what his hell, or at least what his 7 levels of hell or purgatory are looking like, and just kind of thinking like, what would that look like beyond, you know, that discussion that we had earlier about, you know, what would you not be as willing to let go of, or what would you need to let go of in order to achieve that peace? But then also, you know, what would that look like for any of us who might be going through that? Because, you know, he's imagining stuff that you know, from one vantage point, never has happened, as far as like who he's associated himself with, you know, with the girlfriend, and then the reality of like his wife and his kid. You know, where is it that our minds would possibly take us in that same, at least in those same circumstances or similar circumstances?
So I want to jump ahead to the final scene. I know I kind of brought it up a little bit ago that it's a staircase. So this scene is probably my favorite scene in the whole movie. Like, going into this, I would have assumed it would be the hospital scenes because, like I said, I'd seen them repeatedly, and but I really like this scene, and I think I would have fucking hated it if it had been that original theory, because his dead son shows up to literally take him up the stairs. The stairs on the landing have the lights. They're literally walking towards the light, and ascending. And this is, of course, the actual Jacob's Ladder. This is the bridge between earth and heaven. He's about to die. He's going up to heaven. If it had been these marble staircases and the columns, and they were literally going to have like angels there, that would have pulled me out like crazy. I would have been like, no, I don't like this. This is no. Just that moment of being able to finally go up the stairs with his son and be happy, like that is so powerful. And then, we click over and we see him dying in Vietnam, and they're like, what did they say exactly? Like he looks peaceful, or I don't remember exactly what they say, but basically that he looks like he's happy in death, And of course, it's because he's reunited with his son, which, oh man, this scene just clinches it for me. This is the scene I love. What about you guys?
Beautiful.
I was gonna say at that end, for me, it takes it from being a horror movie into being a war movie, or at least a combination of the two. Because when it comes to death in a lot of war movies, not just Vietnam War movies, but a lot of war movies, you don't get to see, and I hate to say the beauty of death, because it is not a beautiful situation, considering that it's warfare and the chaos that ensues because of that, or the chaos that surrounds so many people. But just the idea that juxtaposition of this guy's at peace as a result of war. And all the violence that's taking place, and the trauma that he'd gone through in his life previous to going to Vietnam is now over. And it took him going to Vietnam and getting killed in Vietnam for him to, I guess, achieve that peace itself, or just the death in itself allowed him to achieve that peace. But just that juxtaposition between those two areas of, he's going into heaven. He's being reunited with his son. He's departing the earth, at least from his spirit or his physical sense, or whatever you want to call it. He's departing the earth through violent means, and that's what's bringing him peace, as opposed to, going on with his life. Which a lot of people argue. If you have a sense of loss, you have to deal with that loss, and he never really seems to deal with it, given, the visions that he's having while he's dying. He's never gotten over the death of his son. He's never come to peace with it in life, but he has to come to peace with it in death.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Man. What about you, Bradford?
Yeah, I think that it's just interesting going back to the whole that what Louis says is, if you're frightened of holding on, dying and holding on, the devil's tearing you apart. If you made peace, devils are really angels. And he goes into his old the old apartment. No one's there, and he just sits. And I see it. He makes his peace. And what is that? That's the question I have. What's the peace he made? He's let go of I guess everything, even though his son appears at the stairwell. You can see that he's not holding on anymore to any of the memories, the good or the bad. I feel like that might be the part that's like, is that what peace is? Is it just letting go fully and going up, and being free and liberated up through the stairwell, up through the ladder. And he's at peace, I see him on Vietnam on the bed there as he's died. I think it's interesting that I think they had a original ending where the hippie chemist comes and doses him with something that then he frees himself from the hallucinations, and then sees the shaking figure, and then it goes from the shaking figure to Jezebel, and then turns into himself, seeing himself. And almost like it's really, and they cut that because I think they wanted more. They realized they had to kind of have more of a definitive ending, like something that felt more, what's the word? A little more, conclusive, or not happy, but just, yeah. So
it's just something that tied it all up instead of hitting you with another question.
Yeah, another question of like, oh, he's seeing himself. Is this all him? This is all him in that he's been, it's like the self-reflective quality, I guess, it's really so important that he does get at the end. You see that it happens. But it's just interesting seeing like what the original ending is like, okay, yeah, we have to have a self-reflective, we have to do that in order to be free. We can't have someone keep pointing out all our foibles and, what we're doing wrong or whatever, but it's us that has to be the one that does that.
So was that the entirety of the alternate ending, or was there more?
I think that was it. It's a little confusing just because with the footage I found was kind of like a little bit raw, but I'm pretty sure that's all that happens.
Yeah, it's still pretty interesting though.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you said there was an alternate ending, I was like, man, where else could they have gone with this? Like, I feel like it all builds to this end, But
right.
I
know. I was like, how could there be something different than what happens?
The staircase goes down. No.
Yeah. Oiks.
There's an escalator.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Yeah, so I don't have anything else to add. I don't know about you guys.
No, it's like two of you already mentioned. I mean, this film ages well, and because it's not relying on CGI or anything else that when you can look back on it and see like, oh yeah, I can see somebody's hand, or I can see that the light doesn't match because the alien is a different shade and is shinier than anything else in this dark this dark scene. But also, just this idea of veterans coming back from war and what they're dealing with, or anyone who's dealing with a traumatic situation and what they might face. And just asking, at least a film, a horror film itself, suspense film and thriller that makes you question everything that's going on in the film, as far as what's real and what's not real. Because the first time that you get an idea of something weird is going on, I think for me it was, when he's going in the subway and like all the areas or all the exits are locked, and like, oh shit, something's about to go down, and there's not anything there that really grabs you, or grabs him in this case, and it goes to the next thing. You're like, what about the fucking demons something was supposed to happen, and you realize it's all happening, the entire time. It's just you're not seeing it at first go through. And then when you go back and you hear those scenes from or those statements from people like Louis, it makes you pay more attention to what took place. But I think it ages pretty well. It's very, I would say it's rewatchable for trying to find those clues and those hints as to what's going on.
I even also think in the subway when he's in that first scene there, really, where he's the two billboards the two ads next to each other in the train. It's like one is something about drugs, like get help from drugs, and then right next to it is hell. Has a thing about hell, and like I forget what that is, but I'm just like, oh wow, here we are. Here's the movie. Drug, kind of from this drug-induced hell. And it's like the movie, obviously it's like all the themes, the drugs testing that was going on there, this kind of purgatory hell realm that he's being put in. That's like hallucinatory in nature. Just those little nuggets that are there. It's so detailed. I was telling James in an email, I don't even want to acknowledge that there's a remake of this. I think that
I wasn't even going to bring it up.
Oh, shoot. Darn it. Well, you guys could edit that out.
No. No, I mean, I haven't watched it, so I don't want to say anything too bad about it, but everyone I know that has watched it says that. So, yeah.
It's also just maybe in this movie too, the kind of message of let's, other than the trauma that with in vets, is like, I wish we could have more discussions about death and dying in our culture. It's shunned, it's pushed away, it's kind of really like locked out of people's mental states, where more indigenous cultures and other traditions really embrace it and celebrate. It's woven into the fabric of their society, and I think that would be really cool, if we could get to that place in this materialistic culture, to be able to kind of just have more of a relationship to it, a healthy relationship, and where it doesn't have to be so scary,
I want to add everything you just said about death. I want to say the same thing about trauma. You had a really great definition of trauma at the beginning of this. Can you hit me with that again real fast?
Yeah, anything that takes us out of present moment awareness.
I love that. I basically want to say everyone I've ever met has trauma.
I agree.
So we need to stop stigmatizing it, and we need to stop acting like it makes you weak to seek help. Like, to me, and I'm not trying to judge exactly, I'm just saying how I feel. I feel weakness is not seeking help for it. It's like you're just giving up and letting it eat you. And if I could do one thing, it would be to just really push anybody. If you need help, go get it. Even if you think, oh, I don't need much help, who cares? Talk to somebody, get it out. We live in this society that just pushes these things down so hard. And I really, really hate that. And I wish that as a society, we could just be really open with, hey, we're all fucked up. It's okay. I'm not saying you need professional help, even just talking to somebody about stuff, just get it out, but yeah, that's one of those things, just like you were saying, we need to embrace death more. I didn't mean to say it that way, but I'm going to stick with it. That's a great phrase. Let's all embrace death, everybody. But no, like, the more that society can talk about it and really keep it in the open, same with trauma, same with mental health in general, I really feel like we would all be living in a way better society if we would stop trying to hide these things that are completely natural.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we don't need to compartmentalize them like the mailman's doing in this.
So yeah, let's go ahead and wrap this up. I first want to really thank you for coming on. I know it was kind of random. For anybody that doesn't know, I literally, and none of you do because only the two of us were there, I literally just walked up to Bradford and I was like, hey, I enjoyed your panel. You need to come on my show. And that was like our entire interaction. So thank you for taking a chance and coming on.
Yeah.
I've really enjoyed this conversation. I've enjoyed all of our email exchanges as well. You're definitely welcome back at any time.
Cool.
But why don't you tell everybody like where they can find you online or find your work or support that awesome film or whatever else.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks. Well, I agree too.
Or your music. Really... Throw that in too.
Yeah. Okay. Music wise, you can go to I have a Bandcamp page, so bradfordtrojan.bandcamp.com. I'm finishing up a new album with the singer Dr. Dog right now, so that should be out in I think later spring. The movie we got Love Letter William H. Shaw. That's coming in. We're filming in March, and you could probably just go right now to The Revenge of Zoe. So they have some pages up for that and kind of follow and see what's going on. And I have Bradford Trojan at IMDb if you want. You can just kind of see what I've been up to and some clips from things and that I've done some of my recent work. Yeah, I really appreciate this. I had a blast. This was a lot of fun. Really cool.
Definitely. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, fantastic. So next week we are looking at the film Parasite, and Shelley Grant from BS Movies Podcasts will be joining us for that. Other than that, I don't have anything else. Don, do you have anything you want to say?
Not at the moment, my friend. I refrained from going on a rant this time. So
you did. I'm impressed. I really thought this was going to be a very the military. Rah! If you want to hear that rant, please go check out our Full Metal Jacket episode. It's a fun rant.
Look, we avoided World War III for the time being, so I get to avoid going on my rant about people on social media, cheering for war, and then not walking to their nearest recruiter office. We're going to do it. What do you mean we?
Yeah, please don't sign me up for that. Oh, man. So I guess we'll end it here. So as always, I am James Sabata.
And I'm Don Guillory.
And we thank you for joining us once again here at the Necronama.com.